They thought your silence meant weakness. They mistook your calm for fear. But what they didn't understand, what they never saw coming, was that your silence was doing the work your words never could. Silence is often misunderstood because the world has been conditioned to equate noise with strength and volume with authority. From an early age, we are taught that the loudest voice in the room is the one that matters most, that confidence must announce itself, that power must be visible and heard. But silence challenges that belief. Silence does not mean there is nothing happening. It means everything is being measured. It is not a lack of presence, but a deliberate refusal to waste energy. Silence is the pause before precision, the moment where impulse is restrained so intention can take over. In a culture addicted to reaction, choosing silence is not weakness. It is discipline. Control begins where reaction ends. When you respond to every provocation, every insult, every misunderstanding, you surrender your power to the moment and to the people who trigger you. Silence, however, keeps that power in your hands. It allows you to decide when, how, and if you will respond at all. It is mastery over emotion, not suppression of it. Silence says, I am aware of what is happening, but I am not ruled by it. That kind of control cannot be faked. It is earned through self-awareness, patience, and the ability to sit with discomfort without flinching. Silence also creates space to think, to observe, to understand the room beyond what is being said out loud. While others rush to speak, silence listens. It notices patterns, intentions, and inconsistencies. It sees who is performing and who is building. In that stillness, clarity emerges. Decisions made from silence are rarely impulsive. They are calculated, grounded, and intentional. Silence becomes a strategic advantage, allowing you to move several steps ahead while others are still reacting to the present moment. There is a quiet authority that comes with restraint. People sense it even if they can't explain it. Silence forces others to fill the gaps with their own assumptions, insecurities, and projections. It exposes who is uncomfortable without constant validation and who needs conflict to feel important. When you do not rush to defend yourself, you communicate confidence without saying a word. You signal that your identity is not fragile, that your worth does not depend on immediate approval or recognition. That kind of presence commands respect, not through intimidation, but through certainty. Silence is also an act of self-respect. It is choosing not to dilute your thoughts by offering them to every situation or every person. Not everyone deserves access to your perspective, your plans, or your emotions. By remaining silent, you protect your focus and conserve your energy for what truly matters. Control is not about domination, it is about direction. Silence directs your attention inward, strengthens your resolve, and allows your actions to be guided by purpose rather than pressure. In that way, silence is not empty. It is full of intention, power, and quiet confidence. Arguments are easy. Anyone can raise their voice, stack words together, and demand to be understood. Arguments give the illusion of strength because they feel active, immediate, and forceful. But most arguments don't change minds. They only harden positions. They turn understanding into competition and truth into a performance. When you argue, you step into a space where ego often speaks louder than wisdom. Choosing action over argument is not avoidance. It is a higher standard of communication, one that doesn't rely on convincing, but on demonstrating. Actions bypass resistance in a way words never can. People can dismiss your explanations, twist your intentions, or question your credibility, but they cannot argue with consistent results. Action removes the debate because it presents evidence instead of opinion. While arguments demand attention, actions earn it. They operate quietly, steadily, and relentlessly, building a case over time that no speech could replicate. When you let your actions speak, you are no longer asking to be believed. You are showing what is real. There is also dignity in refusing to over-explain yourself. Constantly arguing your position can signal uncertainty, as if your truth needs validation to survive. Action-driven individuals understand that clarity does not come from defending every decision, but from standing firmly in it. They trust the process enough to let time reveal their intentions. This patience separates those who seek approval from those who pursue purpose. Action says, I know where I'm going, without asking anyone for permission to move. Arguments drain energy, actions multiply it. Every argument pulls you into emotional labor, managing reactions, responding to accusations, revisiting the same points over and over. Action redirects that energy into progress. Instead of feeding conflict, you invest in growth. Instead of proving others wrong, you focus on proving yourself capable. Over time, this creates momentum. And momentum is persuasive. It changes how people see you, not because you demanded respect, but because your consistency made it unavoidable. Letting actions speak louder than arguments also requires trust in yourself. It means accepting that not everyone will understand you in real time, and being okay with that. It means allowing misunderstanding to exist temporarily while you continue moving forward. This is uncomfortable, especially in a world that pressures instant clarity and constant explanation. But those who build something meaningful know that results arrive on their own schedule. When they do, they answer questions no argument ever could. Growth does not announce itself. It doesn't need an audience, applause, or constant acknowledgement to be real. True growth happens quietly, in routines no one sees and in decisions no one celebrates. It takes place when motivation fades and discipline remains, when progress is measured not by attention but by consistency. The loudest transformations are often invisible at first, because they are built internally before they ever show externally. Growth begins in silence, long before it demands recognition. There is a difference between being seen and becoming better. Many chase visibility, mistaking exposure for progress, but growth is not impressed by attention. It asks for commitment, repetition, and patience. While others are broadcasting intentions, growth is executing plans. It shows up early, stays late, and keeps working when no one is watching. That kind of effort doesn't trend, doesn't go viral, and doesn't seek validation, but it compounds. Over time, what was once quiet becomes undeniable. Quiet growth reshapes identity before it reshapes circumstances. It changes how you think, how you respond, and how you carry yourself. You begin to move with more certainty, less urgency, and greater focus. External noise loses its influence because your internal foundation is stronger. You are no longer driven by comparison or competition. You are guided by progress. This internal shift is powerful because it cannot be taken away or disrupted by outside opinion. When growth finally becomes visible, it often surprises people. They didn't hear it coming because it didn't make noise. They didn't notice the small changes stacking on top of each other, the habits forming, the mindset evolving. All they see is the outcome, not the process. And that outcome speaks with a volume words cannot match. It changes conversations, alters expectations, and redefines how you are perceived. Not because you demanded attention, but because growth commanded it. Loud growth doesn't shout, it resonates. It echoes through results, resilience, and readiness. It shows in how you handle pressure, how you adapt to challenges, and how you sustain progress without external fuel. Growth that makes noise often fades when attention disappears, but growth that develops in silence endures. It becomes part of who you are, not just what you've achieved, and its impact carries weight long after the moment has passed. Not every challenge placed in front of you is meant to be confronted, and not every provocation deserves a response. The world is full of noise designed to pull your attention away from what matters. Opinions that don't build, criticism that doesn't guide, and conflicts that don't serve your growth. When you engage with everything, you dilute your focus. You spend energy explaining yourself to people who are not listening and proving yourself to situations that were never meant to define you. Discernment is knowing the difference between a battle that shapes your future and a distraction that only feeds your ego. Many conflicts are invitations to react, not opportunities to advance. They are emotional traps disguised as tests of strength. When you respond impulsively, you give those moments more power than they deserve. Silence, in this case, is not retreat. It is refusal. Refusal to be dragged into cycles that don't elevate you. Refusal to trade long-term progress for short-term satisfaction. Choosing not to speak is often choosing not to lose time, clarity, and direction. It is an understanding that your voice has value, and value should not be spent carelessly. There is strength in selective engagement. When you speak less, people listen more. When you respond only when it matters, your words carry weight. Constant defense weakens authority, but intentional silence reinforces it. You are not obligated to correct every misconception or counter every narrative. Some people are committed to misunderstanding because it supports their version of reality. Arguing with them does not change the outcome. It only confirms their relevance in your life. Silence removes their influence by denying them access to your attention. Not every battle deserves your voice because not every battle aligns with your purpose. Purpose demands focus, and focus requires boundaries. When you engage in unnecessary conflict, you fracture your energy and scatter your momentum. Progress thrives in clarity, not chaos. By choosing which battles to fight, you protect your mission from interruption. You conserve mental and emotional resources for challenges that actually move you forward. This is not avoidance, it is prioritization. It is leadership over your own life. Walking away from certain battles requires maturity. It means accepting that silence may be misunderstood in the moment. That restraint may be labeled as weakness by those who only understand volume. But time reveals intent. Those who are building do not have time to argue with shadows. They understand that success speaks in outcomes, not debates. By withholding your voice from battles that don't deserve it, you allow your actions, consistency, and direction to answer on your behalf. Power is often imagined as something loud, forceful, and constantly asserting itself. We associate it with dominance, control over others, and visible authority. But real power doesn't rush to prove its presence. It doesn't need to announce itself or demand attention. Power moves in stillness because stillness reflects confidence. When you are secure in who you are and where you are going, there is no urgency to convince anyone else. You move with intention, not impulse, and that calm presence becomes its own form of influence. Stillness allows power to be precise. When everything around you is reactive, emotional, and chaotic, the person who remains composed stands out. They see more clearly because they are not clouded by noise. They choose their moments carefully, speak only when necessary, and act with deliberation. This level of control intimidates without trying to. It unsettles those who rely on reaction because they cannot predict or manipulate someone who refuses to be rushed. Power in stillness is unpredictable in the best way, measured, thoughtful, and grounded. There is also a deep internal strength required to remain still when provoked. Anyone can react, it takes discipline to pause. Stillness means you trust yourself enough not to chase validation or immediate outcomes. You understand that timing matters, and that acting too soon can weaken your position. By waiting, you gather information, sharpen perspective, and prepare for decisive movement. When action finally comes, it is effective because it is informed, not emotional. That is the difference between movement and progress. Stillness shifts the balance of control. When you do not react, others are forced to reveal themselves. They speak more, expose motives, and often overextend. Your silence becomes a mirror reflecting their impatience and insecurity back to them. In that space, you gain leverage, not through manipulation, but through awareness. Power is not always about doing more. Sometimes it is about doing less and letting the situation unfold until clarity emerges. Power that moves in stillness lasts longer than power built on force. Loud power burns fast because it depends on constant energy and attention. Quiet power endures because it is rooted in self-mastery. It shows up in resilience, in consistency, and in the ability to remain steady under pressure. When you learn to be still, you are no longer controlled by circumstances. You become the one who decides when to move, how to move, and why, and that control is the purest form of power. Words gain value through restraint. When you speak constantly, your voice blends into the background, becoming part of the noise people learn to ignore. But when you choose silence first, your words gather weight. They carry the gravity of intention, the credibility of observation, and the authority of experience. Speaking less is not about withholding truth. It is about protecting it until the moment demands it. When you finally speak, it is not impulsive, it is deliberate. Silence sharpens language. It gives you time to think through what actually needs to be said rather than what simply wants to be expressed. In that pause, emotion settles and clarity rises. Your words become cleaner, more precise, and more impactful because they are not driven by reaction. They are guided by purpose. People can sense the difference. They listen differently when they know you do not speak casually or without reason. When a quiet person speaks, attention shifts. The room leans in. There is curiosity, even respect, because silence has created expectation. Your words are not competing for space, they command it. This is not about dominance, but about credibility. People trust voices that do not rush to be heard. They recognize that restraint often signals depth, thoughtfulness, and confidence. When you finally speak, it feels earned. Speaking after silence also reframes narratives. Instead of defending yourself in fragments over time, you present a complete, grounded perspective. Your words are supported by actions people have already witnessed. You are not trying to convince, you are clarifying. This changes the dynamic. Your voice becomes a conclusion rather than an argument, a statement rather than a reaction. It settles conversations instead of escalating them. The power of finally speaking lies in alignment. Your words match your actions, your tone matches your intent, and your presence matches your message. There is no contradiction because silence has given you time to align internally. When you speak from that place, your words land with impact and linger beyond the moment. They don't need repetition because they are felt, understood, and remembered. And that's the truth they never saw coming. That silence was never emptiness. It was preparation. While they were waiting for explanations, you were building evidence. While they were demanding answers, you were becoming the answer. You didn't disappear. You didn't fall behind. You didn't lose your voice. You were refining it. And when the world finally noticed, it wasn't because of what you said. It was because your silence had already said everything.